Hello there, it's me again. You've been seeing a lot of me lately because there's been a lot of watches coming out, and today is no different. So a couple of days ago, I traveled to New York City to meet up with Garmin and learn about the new Instinct 3 Crossover AMOLED. That's not actually the name, it's just the Instinct Crossover AMOLED, but as you'll find out, it's pretty much an Instinct 3 with a very different twist on it. It should go without saying that this is not an in-depth review or anything like that. Today we're gonna unbox the Instinct Crossover AMOLED, I'm gonna catch myself saying that, and take a look at it because this is a very, very different kind of watch. It's super interesting. Some of the choices they made with this are also super interesting, and we'll talk through all of that today. All right, so here we go. We've got the Instinct Crossover AMOLED. Again, there's no 3 on the box. Now, they've done this before. This is the Instinct Crossover Original, which I did review a couple of years ago. This one was based off the Instinct 2. And as you can see, the very different feature of this watch is that it has mechanical hands. Now this watch, as you can see, the battery is actually dead, but I could still show you, it featured an MIP display. So this was like that kind of dull calculator display of the past. This new one here, the Instinct Crossover AMOLED, changes that because in the title there you see AMOLED. All right. Opening her up, getting this thing. I'm not like much of an unboxer, so I'm just gonna get to the point. So there it is. We've got our little sticker and packaging over the top. I'm gonna get that off there. Wow, that's actually, it's actually really cool looking. I love the color. So that's the packaging if you care. It comes with the standard Garmin charging cable, nothing new there. Get rid of the box. Oh, check that out. Check out that boot up animation, that is super cool. So the Instinct 3 Crossover AMOLED comes in a couple of different colors. There's this like grayish version I have here, which I think looks really nice because it's got like a black, true black kind of sandwiched in the middle here. And then the buttons are kind of a gray, and then the bezel's gray, and the metal's kind of this cool raw stainless steel look. But on top of that, they also have like this really interesting kind of gold, yellow mustard look as well. I don't know if I'm a big fan of that, but I haven't seen it in person to really judge it. The cool thing about this watch though is the hands are like a shiny, you know, polished metal, so you can kind of see it at different angles, and they appear to be like transparent at the tip of them, and then like the body of it is kind of hollow. I also think this looks really cool in terms of the design with the AMOLED display in the background off, because you could still tell the time of day just by glancing at this, obviously, because it's a standard analog mechanical watch. I've got the Instinct 3 AMOLED on the left, and here I've got the Instinct 3 Solar on the right. Now the left one is a 45mm case size. The right one is the 50mm case size. Those were the two sizes available on the 3. On this new crossover model, you can see it kind of sits in the middle in terms of size, and that's because this watch is right about 47mm in diameter. So they didn't stick with the same case size, which is kind of interesting. Another difference I noticed with this watch right off the bat is the bezel. So on the previous Instinct 3, you can see the orange accents. You can see it more on the black model here, kind of sandwiched into the plastic. That is a piece of aluminum underneath, and that's sort of rigidity and stiffness for the watch, and it's supposed to make it more durable. However, that aluminum was all covered up by this plastic bezel over the top, where on the new crossover model, you can see a lot more of that metal is showing, and it's not all covered up. And I think that actually makes it look a little bit more premium. Okay, let's get into some of the details here. I'm just rambling about my first impressions of this watch. So this watch, in terms of price, is going to start at $649 for the model I have here, which is very expensive when we start to go through some of the specs here and what this watch can do, because again, it's pretty much just an Instinct 3. And if you want the tactical version of this watch, which they do make, and it's all blacked out and has the tactical features like stealth mode and kill switch and all that stuff, that's gonna cost you $749. That price is very high when you consider that something like the Fenix 8 is only a couple of $100 more. In fact, you might even be able to find a Fenix 8 on sale for similar pricing to this. But again, this is sort of its own thing. Like, I feel like Garmin, you know, they can kind of make up whatever pricing they want with this, because I can't think of another watch that does this sort of hybrid model. So when it comes to features on this watch, again, we're talking about an Instinct 3 here. I'm not gonna go through every feature this watch can do because I've already reviewed the Instinct 3 on this channel. If you wanna learn the details and the GPS accuracy and the heart rate accuracy and all that stuff, go watch my Instinct 3 review, which I'll link somewhere on the screen now. This watch has the same activity profiles, the same training tools, the same multi-band GPS accuracy. All that stuff is the same here, including the fact that this watch does not have offline maps for navigation. It does have breadcrumb navigation, but no maps. And to my knowledge, the Instinct crossover AMOLED may be the most expensive Garmin watch that does not have maps. Another similarity to the Instinct 3 AMOLED is that this watch does have an AMOLED display, but it's not touchscreen, which is kind of interesting. But I guess it makes sense in this case because you get the watch hands there. And another interesting similarity on this watch compared to the Instinct 3, if we flip it over, is that this watch has Garmin's Gen 4 heart rate sensor, which is one generation behind. This heart rate sensor came out like 5-6 years ago, maybe. And it's kind of interesting they chose that. They're sticking with that on this watch because, again, we're talking about a $650 or $750 US watch that has their last generation heart rate sensor. I don't know why. And just like the Instinct 3, if I double tap the top left corner here, we do get the built-in LED flashlight on this watch, which I absolutely love. I love every watch that comes out with this, and it's something I use every single day. You've probably heard me talking about this before, but this little flashlight is so useful for, various different tasks. If you're navigating a dark hotel room or you're trying to find your car keys, I use it all the time. When it comes to hardware though, there is one major change and a welcome change on the Instinct crossover AMOLED. I keep trying to say that and jumbling my words. And it's that they actually covered the display this time with a sapphire lens. So it's much more scratch resistant compared to the non-sapphire on the Instinct 3. I'm glad they did that, especially at this price point. But that's all the hardware stuff. We're here to talk about these hands. This watch is all about those mechanical hands under the hood. Because as you can see, when I scroll around the user interface, they do different things and they really try to leverage what these hands can do. Now, when I talked to Garmin about this, they pointed out a few things that I thought was super fun and interesting that this watch can do. And one of these is the watch face here. So if I dive into my watch face settings here, you can see they have a bunch of different watch faces for this watch, and they all kind of leverage those hands in certain ways. But some of these watch faces can do some fun party tricks. So if I dive into the watch face settings here, and go down, you can see that there's a new setting for dynamic watch face. And what that does is it will actually move the complications I have set here around the screen depending on where these hands are. So at certain times of the day, if these hands start to block any of these complications, like the date or my step count or whatever, they'll actually move around the screen and become unblocked. I thought that was a fun little detail to add here. And if I scroll down and also look at all these other settings here, you can see there's also settings for hand highlight and hand color as well. So if I go to hands highlight here and scroll down, you can see the hands there. Try to look closely on my camera. They're changing how the hands actually get outlined or backlit. You can also select your hand color here. So if I scroll down, I can change the backlight color behind the hands. And what I thought was cool about this is this sort of gives off the illusion that the hands themselves are glowing, like there's electronics inside the hands or they're glow in the dark or something like that. But what's happening here is Garmin is leveraging the AMOLED display behind the hand and backlighting the hand itself. It really looks like the hands themselves are glowing, and that's really cool. When it comes to the actual AMOLED display behind the mechanical hands, Garmin's actually using their older generation AMOLED technology. And that means this does not get as bright as something like the Fenix 8 Pro I have here. So this watch will peak out at around 1,000 nits of brightness. Garmin doesn't actually claim the nit value for these displays, but historically speaking, from the last generation of AMOLED displays, it's probably about 1,000 nits. And what that means is it should be bright for most applications, and you shouldn't have a problem with it in direct sunlight or something like that. But for the most part, The newer generation is brighter, the Venu 4, the Fenix 8 Pro. Those watches get the new AMOLED, which is like 2000 nits of brightness. Now that we've taken a look at that watch face, let's talk about some of the other things the hands can do. So if you go into various widgets, you'll see that the hands move around. You can see in the weather widget, they sort of go horizontal here, but then they go vertical here just to make room for more information on the watch. But probably the coolest party trick with the Instinct crossover AMOLED is the compass widget here. So if you take a look, I've got a sort of analog looking compass on the display. And if I turn the watch, the actual mechanical hands turn with the compass. This is just super cool, and I could probably do this all day. It's so cool. And if you're wondering what happens on like a map page here, you can see I've got the map view in the background. The hands just kind of go vertical and try to get out of the way so you can see the display, but yeah, I was kind of hoping they would point north or something like that. But what is cool is anytime I've got a gauge on the display, it'll actually use the hands as an indicator for the gauge. So I've got a pretty low heart rate right now because I'm just talking, but if I were working out in like zone 5, the hands would rotate up into that higher zone, which is pretty cool. And when you do scroll through the data fields in an activity, this is what it looks like. They just go horizontal or perpendicular to get out of the way so you can see your information. Again, compass view, love that. And if we do take a look at like the brightness settings here, if I toggle the brightness, the hands sort of move along with that as well. So you can see they sort of just utilize those hands to do a variety of things throughout the user interface that make it really interesting to look at. Within the settings of this watch, there is a whole section for analog hands. So in here, you can select your highlight. You can have it on auto for when the backlight or the AMOLED display turns off. The hands will also turn off. You can have them always on, so the hands are always illuminated, which is kind of cool, or you can just have it completely off. And you can also calibrate the hands as well. So if you're mountain biking and you take a fall and really hit this watch hard, the hands can actually become out of sync. So if you need to correct that, you can go in here. You can hit calibrate now. It'll go through this little routine and then they should be calibrated. And I believe you can also manually calibrate them as well. Oh yeah, look at that. As I push the button, it's sort of tweaking the location of the hand if they're still a little bit off. Okay, that's really it though. There's a lot of things these hands can do when you scroll through the user interface. I'm not gonna go through every little detail here, but it is super interesting. At the end of the day, who is this watch for? I'd say, I mean, it's pretty obvious. This is totally different than everything else on the market out there. I'd say its closest competitor, like some of the G-Shock really interesting watches that are available. And it's definitely a conversation starter. Like if you wear this thing around town, I'm sure someone's going to notice it. So if you have $650 and you're in the market for a smartwatch, is this right for you? Well, only you can answer that. It's definitely not the best value option out there at this price point. It's got the older heart rate sensor. It doesn't have full mapping like other Garmin's. And there's a lot of competition in this space that gives you a lot more features for way less money. I mean, particularly the first thing that comes to mind is like the Coros Nomad at $350 with mapping. And it kind of has that rugged look as well. But again, this thing has the mechanical hands. That's what this is all about. And Garmin really doesn't have any competition in this space because of how different it is. If you want something super different, this is the price you'll have to pay. At least this time around, we've got Sapphire and it does look super premium. Admittedly, it is a really cool looking watch. So I'll probably wear this thing for a while and may circle back with a follow-up review if it's worth it. But again, if you want to know all of the details and what this watch can do, just go watch my Instinct 3 review. I'll link that on the screen. Okay, friends, that's it for this one. Hopefully you found this fun or entertaining in some way. And if you did, make sure to give me the old thumbs up and subscribe down below so you don't miss more videos coming very soon. This isn't the end. This is kind of just the beginning. So stay tuned and I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.